Hey guys, Rominating Reaper here. So I've just got done watching The Order. This is available to watch on Prime Video in the UK. This is of course the latest film from Justin Kurzel, director of movies like Snowtown, Assassin's Creed, and Macbeth. I've been hearing a lot of really good things about it, so I was very excited to actually watch it. So I was a little disappointed to find out it didn't get a cinema release near me, like, at all. So I was very, very happy when I saw it was available to watch on Prime Video. This is, of course, based on a true story, and I actually didn't know much about the real story this is based on going in. So, in a way, I'd be able to learn a bit about the real events, and also hopefully get a gripping film out of it too. But does it do its potentially interesting true story justice? Let's find out. So the film follows Terry Husk, a veteran FBI agent specializing in organized crime, who's been transferred to a seemingly sleepy town in Idaho in a change of pace as he intends to slow things down after 26 years on the job. However, that becomes a bit more complicated than expected when he learns of a series of armed robberies that have been carried out by a local white supremacist group. And so, Terry, along with local deputy Jamie Bowen and a longtime FBI colleague Joanne, investigate the robberies with the intent of finding and bringing in the group's leader, Bob Matthews. So, look, being that I didn't know much about the real-life events going in, I certainly had a bit of a lesson ahead of me. And I gotta say, now knowing a bit more about these events, having watched the film, I gotta say, holy shit, what a ride. This is a really, really good movie. I would highly recommend you watch it. Seriously, this has flown way too under the radar. It is actually criminal. What makes this really sing is that it is a straightforwardly gripping game of cops and robbers, It takes this very simple narrative framing device and it plays it down the straight and narrow, and it works all the better for it. Now, yes, it does lean a little bit into sort of familiar cliches of this type of story. We're centered on a hard-drinking veteran cop, who's a smoker, pops pills, but also having family troubles as well. But they are all handled well enough within the context of this story that it won't prove to be too bothersome and won't detract at all from your investment in it. As this story especially comes to life in a series of really tense heists and shootouts. Some highlights include the initial bank heist, or a robbery of an armored truck by a mall, or even one later on in the film on the road. All of these various robberies are handled really, really well. They are super white knuckle tense to watch throughout, and they're serviced by fantastic sound design where you can really feel every bullet being fired, and the impact of all the explosions is so damn good. But beneath the surface of a cat and mouse chase, the film actually has a lot more going on beneath the surface than one might expect of this type of story, because at its core, what it is a really gripping look at the sort of mindset behind these white supremacist fanatic groups, sort of exploring the idea that they blame their setbacks on others, when in actuality, it's a front for their own ineptitude, but also explores how dangerous they can be when incentivized and radicalized with the aspiration of something big and game changing. It is really, really compellingly explored stuff. But on the flip side of it, we also have this idea that In a world where we have people like this, whose hearts are so full of hatred, that there is decency out there, and how, what lives on longer than our bodies is our actions and words, and that's what we should aspire to be putting forward. And all of this feels especially timely, given that we live in the age of MAGA, a radicalized, fanatic group of our times. And in fact, ironically, the book that is featured very prominently throughout this film is mentioned in the film's text ending to actually have inspired the violent insurrectionist attack on Capitol Hill on January 6th. So, yeah, you can see how, history repeating itself. And again, the events in this film really happened. And, topping off this, gripping story is some very strong cinematography with a great use of color. Its low contrast look actually works really well for the down to earth, gritty story being told, as well as a very ominous and tense score by Jed Kurzel. It all really serves to really heighten this gripping atmosphere. But what I think really makes this thing work above all that is the acting. Jude Law gives a fantastic performance as Terry Husk, and I'm not going to be the first to point out the irony of someone with the surname Law playing an officer of the law. I'm not the first to point that out. I'm certainly not going to be the last either. He does a really good job, very much, showing how, he handles these cases after all these years on the job, and even with his difficult family life, but also showing, the cracks of how the stress of the job occasionally gets to him. He is really, really good. Always a good time when Jude Law is involved. We also have Ty Sheridan as Jamie, the young deputy who takes on the case with Terry. Yeah, this is probably the best performance I've seen from him. He is excellent. You can very much see sort of Terry's influence shaping Jamie's approach to the case. He's a loving family man who also becomes quite consumed by this job, and he does a fantastic job, really sells that. We also have Journey Smollett as Joanne. Yeah, she's a no nonsense FBI agent who it's also has been around Terry long enough that she is sort of in a way fed up of his shit. It's she does a very good job with that as well. On the flip side of things, we also have Nicholas Hoult, who has been taking on some really interesting roles of recent. Notably, this, where he plays Bob Matthews, he does a fantastic job. He's a guy who is really frustrated by the lack of progress that the white supremacist movement has been making towards, a unified white America. But also, he's charismatic enough that, he can easily persuade anyone to rally behind his cause. Yeah, Holt has really come into his own as an actor, and yeah, he has been, very much on another level in his recent roles, and this just continues that streak. We also have Alison Oliver as his wife, Debbie, and she does a very good job too. We also notably have a small role from Mark Maron as a radio presenter who very much, may communicate some of the film's messaging. Everybody here does an excellent job, and it really, keeps us invested in this gripping cops and robbers tale, and it really allows the emotional beats to land. There's a particularly impactful moment late on in the film in, the midst of a shootout that is handled devastatingly and really lands, before ultimately building to a, white knuckle gripping climax. Yeah, It is fantastically done, although I will say it ends on a note that is perhaps kind of abrupt and anticlimactic, maybe leaving some things, frustratingly unresolved. But that aside, I really, really enjoyed this. I thought this was a really good film. Overall, The Order is a gripping dramatization of a frighteningly timely real life event sold by, its straightforwardly gripping approach to the tale and fantastic acting. Please, please watch this. Out of 10, The Order gets an 8. So yeah, let me know down in the comments. Have you seen The Order? What did you think of it? Are you someone who is familiar with this story? If so, I'd like to hear that perspective on how it was handled. And what is your favourite film that Justin Kurzel has directed? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.